Forster. I'm the head of the ceramics department at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston Glassell School of Art. And I'm here at Monterosso Gallery where I've curated a ceramics exhibition. And so, in thinking about how to bring a group of ceramists together, I wanted to make it more of a theme than just the fact that we're all working in clay. And so I thought a very common denominator in a lot of ceramics, and the reason why a lot of ceramists choose clay is because of its natural sort of characteristics and components. And so I've sort of grouped artists into little categories or sort of ways that they build or finish their pieces that relate to the natural environment. One of the groupings is people that sort of draw inspiration from flora, and an example of that is right next to me here in Sharon Dennard's pieces that are sort of abstract vases and sort of stylized flowers in those vases. The artists, I think, sort of deviate from a naturalistic approach and not necessarily trying to create realism or realistically reproduce nature, but sort of creatively deviating from that various degrees of abstraction. And so one of the other groupings is just in the handling of materials, and that could be like the way a slab is broken and how that has like a torn edge and how that to me looks sort of like a rock formation. And then again, an example would be Sharon Dennard's. Or for example, in coil building, the coils still have a very soft sort of quality that reminds me of like that malleable clay before it's dried and fired, and that's evident in some of Roy Hanscom's wall hanging pieces. Again, a very strong play or reference to the flora theme. Another way that I've sort of grouped people is leaving clay unfired, like raw clay, or not unfired, but unglazed. And so having evident just the clay quality and finished pieces, and almost every artist in the show, I think, has a little bit of that, even if just minimally present in some pieces. To elaborate on some of the points I'm making, the unglazed pieces and like really just retaining clay qualities. You can see that evident in Clara Hogue's faces here. One has no glaze at all, and the others have some glaze but leave some of that clay sort of evident. It almost has a brush-like quality to it still. And the same can be said about her torso, where it's just like the handling of the material is very soft and sort of mimics flesh or even just like clay in its very malleable stage. Certainly a great example of unglazed ceramic are Camilla Schmesna's pieces. And you can see that just in the monochromatic nature of it, that it's just this like white stoneware, porcelainous stoneware, and very much has like the clay quality and sort of a torn edge and just the way that things are sort of stacked together. It's like a geologic formation almost. And again, that could be said also about Angela Corso and Slabs. One does have glaze, and it's a very natural chino glaze, and then the other has no glaze and has just a very sort of soft quality. And again, like Roy's coils, reminds me of like clay processes because it's so easily reads like a slab. We have some more sort of abstracted and very lush sort of sculptures on this pedestal. This is Joan Brown on the smaller plinths, and then Lauren Clay is next door to her. Both sort of referencing kind of natural shapes and natural elements, but in sort of varying degrees of abstraction. This to me almost reminds me of like a snail or something actually moving, and in Lauren's, and then the way, again, it's just similar to Camilla's, how the material is handled. You can sort of almost see like the pinch marks and how this material or this form was built up with a more malleable material, and then just the very intricate sort of patterning on Joan Brown's pieces, and very much referencing like some kind of skeletal or floral structure. And then again, a reference to flora is actually a Joan Brown and Nashkman, who's a metalsmith, collaborated. And the flower in this piece is actually the metal component. And then if we look in the middle of the room, we have Vivian Pastor, who again is very, very much working in sort of that floral, I guess, ideology. And again, not trying to make them realistic necessarily. They still have like a maker's mark to them. And then, ironically, the only vessel maker, I suppose, as far as traditional vessels would be Eva Hoven's pieces here. And I'm really just drawn to those and the build of the surface and the multiple firings they go through to achieve this sort of naturally corroded surface quality. And so it kind of reminds me of lichen possibly growing on a piece of the granite, or maybe urchins in the sea that have accumulated over time. Geologic qualities, and I talked a little bit about Camilla's sort of rock-laid structures. My own pieces kind of fit into that category, and I'm thinking a lot about topography, but also I'm repurposing glaze waste. And so when the glaze goes unfired into the environment, it's actually toxic because of the high quantities of heavy metals. And so part of my purpose is definitely recycling and an environmental kind of cause, but at the same time I'm kind of talking about that relationship between that material and the landscape. And so the lower pieces are displayed on a plinth here, sort of you see them from above, like aerial views of the landscape, I suppose. You can go on Google Earth and see similar images, and it's just compilations of miscellaneous clays, so you can kind of see the strata, and then random glaze waste that's placed inside of those, and then also a couple hanging on the wall. And then Jessica Kreuter's pieces, although very figurative, to me sort of read as geodes, because you have this, again, unglazed kind of rock clay quality to them that's almost earthen-like, and then inside you have these very shiny, like, little gems or jewels, and some of them actually kind of read as industrial or man-made little gadgets and objects, so it's like this sort of collection of things. And I'm really interested in like the composition of those little clusters in relationship to the unglazed parts and the minimally glazed parts, and creating texture and composition. And I think it's interesting, especially with the human element, so it like talks about this relationship between man and nature that I think all of these artists probably address at some point or another. The one remaining artist in the show, and I think an anomaly to some degree in the sense of refinement, although I guess Roy's are very refined in parts too, are Naomi Peterson's. And she fits into that category of having some like unglazed parts that leave that sort of a nice clay quality evident, right? That earthy kind of toasty color. And I like that she has it on the handle so that you actually feel that if you're using one of her functional pieces. And then the way that she's drawing inspiration from like vegetation, like blackberries, for example, on this cup, and it's like little blackberries or half blackberries applied to the outside of this, and the number of them, so it becomes like an ornament or a pattern, right? And then on here, like a leaf motif with little dots that could be hackberries or cherries or what have you. You can see, or strawberries. This reminds me of like kind of a strawberry cluster. And so using this I guess, inspiration, source of inspiration, be it berries or what have you, and then like turning that into this sort of graphic or illustrative composition in a functional piece. For the show as a whole, I was really trying to like create a balance of people who are using a more refined approach and color, and comparing that with, and this is a perfect pairing right here to sort of emphasize this point, people who are handling their material in a more spontaneous way, or crude for lack of better words, and then having that sort of very raw quality to it. So again, I'm at Monte Rosso Gallery at Spring Street Studios, and Naturalistic, the show I curated, is up until September 10th, on which day, that's a Saturday, at 4 o'clock. I'm going to do a short artist talk about the show as a whole, and other artists will also be present to talk about their pieces.